So you need to get from Worcester to Boston during rush hour? What's the fastest way to go? GBH News transportation reporter Bob C. and Worcester reporter Sam Turkin set out to find out with Bob on the train and Sam in the car. Click right here to watch that race or head to the link in the description. Now, Sam and Bob join me with what they learned along the route. Welcome. Bob, let me ask you this. What is the incentive to commuter rail riders to ride the commuter rail when, one, it's more expensive, and two, it takes more time? And we've actually got some numbers on this, so take a look. A round trip costs by car $22.02. Commuter rail, that's $24.50. The total time for the car is 58 minutes and 45 seconds. For the commuter rail, it's an hour and 27 minutes.
Well, for the people who take the commuter rail, the big advantage is that they're not driving, so they can pay attention to other things like doing work. I mean, Tracy was amazing with her computer, how much work she got done that she would never be able to do if she were driving. So for her, that was a valuable enough trade-off. Plus, her family only has one car. So that's another reason that she would take commuter rail. But it inconvenienced her because she had to leave so much earlier to get to work.
So is there any indication that this might change, that this express might come back? Is there a conversation being had about it?
I think there is, but the bigger picture is that the Worcester to Boston service really has to be improved. The tracks, I think, have to be improved so the speeds can be greater, because what's coming ahead is the I-90 Austin redevelopment project. And that's going to have very disruptive effects on traffic on the Pike. And they're going to need a good commuter rail alternative to get around that. That's still a few years away, but they have to begin now to prepare for that. Plus, we also hear about West-East Rail.
Right.
And that, of course, the Worcester to Boston link is extremely important for that. So it's a key piece of track that really needs to be improved. And I think there's a lot of incentive for them to change the schedule. Maybe not the whole schedule, but at least provide a couple of times a day where people can take a quicker trip.
Well, Sam, yeah,
I was just going to say, it's like, how are you going to make East-West Rail work if Worcester to Boston Rail doesn't even work?
That's
well?
right. And I mean, you know more than anyone here at the table about what it's like to have to commute from Worcester. I mean, what impact will that project have on folks? Yeah.
If we think traffic is bad during rush hour now, I mean, Bob knows all about this project, and I think disruptive would be even an understatement, right? I mean,
optimistic. It's nobody's quite sure because there has to be a lot of planning, but if they don't have the rail option, it's just going to be that much more difficult.
I'm thoughtful of this issue around Worcester to Boston. I'm from Springfield, and so out in Western Mass, we have long suffered that lack of connection to Boston. And I know that there's always those legislators that bring it up every session, that connection from Springfield to Boston. Is that in the works at all, or any thought around that?
Well, it is, but I would note that the traffic from Springfield south to Hartford and New Haven is actually really growing. So there seems to be more interest in going from Springfield to New York. But it's still, for Massachusetts, it's really important that we have a line that at least goes from Springfield to Boston. And, of course, there are other people who wanted to go to Pittsfield, too, farther out. So it's a link that people think is essential for the state to have.
And I know we talked about this before we taped, you know, there's an issue also about, like, that link from the connection from Boston to Springfield to Boston and vice versa may not have a stop in Worcester on all lines. And that might be also an issue for folks who are traveling from Worcester to Boston on the bus or that kind of way. Right, Sam?
Right, yeah. I mean, that would seem to be a complete waste, right? If there was no stop in Worcester, because again, this is the second largest city in New England.
Right.
I mean, they're only about 40. Worcester, Boston, only about 47 miles apart. That was one of the main focuses of this story. These are the two biggest cities in New England, even though many people don't realize that about Worcester. How are they not easier to get between when they're 47 miles apart?
Is this part of, Bob, and I know you've been covering the T and the transportation for a very long time, is this just sort of symptomatic of what a lot of, we'll say, skeptics of the MBTA and its work. Is this just another instance of the MBTA not thinking about riders in this space?
No, I think they're thinking about it, but accomplishing it is a whole other question. But you need good service in order to induce demand. If you look at the service and say, well, nobody's riding, well, maybe they're not riding because it really doesn't work for them. So I think it's very important that they establish a service that attracts people, and let's wait and see what it produces. So I think you can sometimes make a decision too quickly to abandon something, and it's not in the best interest of everyone.
So what's the next race? Are we going to do car versus bus? Are we going to...
I was thinking of some kind of drone race.
Oh, okay.
Bob's always been very high on the Providence line. And that, as we were planning this story, we were actually initially comparing the Providence line to the Worcester line. Because as Bob always says, you take the Providence line personally and you talk about how great it works.
Yes, it really works well. And they do have a couple of express trains in the morning, and they're packed, that bypass Sharon, Canton Junction, Hyde Park, all of those stops. And people respond to that. You know, if the service is going to be efficient, and of course the alternative is driving on the Southeast Expressway or Route 95 or 24, and that for people is just too much. So that helps as an incentive. But it is something that people will, I think, respond to if the service is reliable and it's fast and it's something they can depend on.
Well, especially as you see sort of population shift with housing markets and changes and things like that. And I've been to Worcester. They got a lot of good restaurants going in there.
Yeah, and I would just note that the whole system benefits from more people taking the commuter line, because if they take the commuter line in, then the odds are more people are riding the red line and the orange line, because maybe they're not working right at South Station. So it seems like there would just be more riders altogether.
Sam brings up a very good point, that some of the reasons people don't take the train is they can't make the connections on time. If they happen to take a red line train and it's delayed and they miss their train, they have to wait another hour or more. That's a big disincentive. So it's really important that we get the T up and running reliably, which will help commuter rail.
Sam Turkin, Bob C., thank you so much.
Thank you.